Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi tahirin. Today I'm going to begin some short lectures on spiritual development. We are going to talk about in these lectures various different Irfanic, spiritual, Akhlaaqi topics. So, inshallah, these brief morning lectures will occur sometime once a week, inshallah, as long as time and material permits. And and we're going to continue some topics that may be useful, inshallah, for refining the soul and helping it to get to a position of purity where it can realize Allah the Exalted, and it can be pure in its deeds, its sayings, and even its thoughts and feelings. So there is a saying um, that's in a biblical book that is apocryphal, or it's in the what they call Septuagint, and it says, and this is a very useful, very nice, reflective paragraph that they have in that book. And it says, "Why do you sleep, soul, and do not bless the Lord? Play a new hymn to God, who is worthy to be praised. Play and be fully awake in wakefulness for Him. For a good melody to God is from a good heart." So, what kind of idea we could take from this is that to have a good heart is a way to be pleasing to Allah the Exalted. So, our goal should be to obtain a good and pure heart. Our goal should be to obtain, firstly and initially, wakefulness from this heedlessness, this forgetfulness, this ghafla. We have in Irfanic discussions this term called ghafla, which is like heedlessness. Now, when somebody has ghafla, when they're heedless, they just need a little bit of shaking to wake them up. So we are like we are in a deep sleep. We are sleeping and heedless of the reality in front of us. We are heedless and unattentive to the fact that Allah the Exalted exists, and He is ever present everywhere we are. He is closer to us than our own self. We're heedless many times to the fact of where we are going and why we are here. If we woke up from this sleep, from this ghafla, we would realize where we are going, from where we came, why we are here, what our situation is, and at the most perfect level, we will realize our Master, the ever-living God, Allah the Exalted, is present. And it's only us who have ignored Allah the Exalted. It's us who have turned our face from Allah the Exalted. Allah is present. Allah is not absent. Every single thing in creation is dependent on Allah the Exalted, not just for its initiation, not just for its beginning, but for the entirety of its entire being. It's a contingent being. All creation, from the highest creation to the lowest, from the biggest to the smallest, is needy for Allah the Exalted. Everything is poor, and Allah is the only rich. But we are unattentive to this fact. We are ignorant and heedless to this reality. And even when we can conceptualize it, we are negligent of it. We forget it. We don't really experience it. That everything created, everything other than Allah, is really deeply needy to Allah the Exalted, more than we can ever fully grasp. More than just saying, absolutely needy. Absolutely needy. And Allah the Exalted is the absolute needless. So, why do you sleep, O soul? Why are you asleep? And you do not bless the Lord. Allah is worthy of the praise. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. All the praise is belonging to Allah the Exalted. This phrase that we use, Alhamdulillah, that you find in the Holy Quran, you find as example in Surah Fatiha, Surah Hamd. Hamd is when you could praise for anything. You praise for the negative things that happen to you and the positive things. Alhamdulillah. Some scholars say this definite article of Alif Lam is there signifies all praise. It means every praise is actually to Allah the Exalted. Allah, all the praise actually belongs to Allah the Exalted. So this is different than when you thank someone for something good they've done to you. That's called shukr. Or when you praise somebody for some kind of good qualities they have. Alhamd is for every praise. Every praise is actually for Allah the Exalted. If you're having a difficulty, it can be praised to Allah for going through that difficulty. If you got a blessing, it can be praised to Allah for that blessing. So you could really use this phrase for everything. But we must understand that Allah the Exalted is wise, all-knowing. He is the Mudabiru al-Amur. He is the manager of the affairs. So Allah the Exalted is our real caregiver. He is really Rabbil Alameen. The Rabb is like the nourisher and cherisher of the worlds. This is the nourisher and cherisher of Rabb. They translate as Lord. It's Allah is Allah the Exalted is the one who takes care of us. So we must wake up. We must awaken this sleepy soul to be fully awake of Him. And by waking up, we should adjust and align our soul, adjust and align our actions and our sayings and our deeds and our thoughts to be something which emanates from a good and pure heart. Our hearts must become pure and good. We must be of those hearts which can be counted amongst the righteous people, the good doers, the sincere in intention. It's very important that when we go to do things, we stop and consider why we are doing it. What is the niyyah? What is the intention behind doing it? Are we doing this with God consciousness? Or are we doing this out of love for ourselves? Or out of love for dunya? We must adjust that attention as much as possible to do things with God consciousness. Sincerely, out of God consciousness. Sincerely, out of love for God. We have hadith from the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, which says that there are 3 types of worshippers. One is the worshipper who worships out of fear. That's the worship of the servant or slave. And then we have the worshipper who worships out of wanting reward. That's the worshipper of that's the worshipper who's the merchant type. He's the businessman. And then there's the worshipper who worships out of love for Allah. He doesn't do it for other things. This is the free people. These are the free type of worship. This is the free servant. This is the servant who is serving Allah freely with his ikhtiyar, out of love for Allah the Exalted. This person realizes Allah the Exalted and does it, not expecting to get paradise for it or a reward in paradise for it, not expecting to just avoid the punishment for it. No, he's doing it completely sincerely out of love for Allah the Exalted. And of course, all these are good. To love, to worship Allah out of love is the highest. To worship Allah wanting some kind of reward, that's good. Allah uses the rewards in the Holy Quran to encourage people. To worship out of avoiding the punishments in the hell, it says good. Allah uses those in the Quran, tells us about those. They're used to encourage us to stay away from forbidden things and to do our wajibat. So all these are good, but they're at different levels. So you could have a combination of these, and you could be working towards sincerely purifying your heart, where you act, say, and do in accordance with love for Allah the Exalted. So it's very important to spiritually develop oneself so that one's intentions are purely for Allah the Exalted. And one's intentions are not for dunya. Now, what can we define dunya as? We could say dunya is those things which take the place of Allah in your heart. Those things which are other than Allah in your heart, that take the place of Allah in your heart. So no matter what that is, maybe it's a book, or maybe it's millions of dollars. Doesn't matter the amount. What matters is that you should be obeying and worshiping Allah there, but you choose that thing other than Allah. You worshiping that thing internally, having internal shirk for other than Allah. Because in that place, your heart should be directed towards Allah the Exalted. Your heart should be conscious of Allah the Exalted. Using the world as a means to get closer to Allah, to obey Allah, is perfectly fine. We don't say go isolate yourself and live in a cloister like a monk and cut yourself off completely from using this world as a means to get closer to Allah. The problem is if that world takes place of Allah the Exalted. The world is a means to reach to felicity with Allah the Exalted, mercy of Allah the Exalted. The world is not the end. Dunya is not the end. And if you think about it, putting your hope in this low temporal world is foolishness. What? We inside seek the absolute, and we put our hopes in the temporal. We seek the eternal, but we put our hopes in the temporary. We fill our hearts with other than Allah until one day death comes and we realize none of this world came with us. Our family took us to the grave. Our money got distributed, our wealth, our property. All our desires of the world got left here, and we suffer. We suffer what our condition of our soul is, and the pain of the separation, the pain of not knowing Allah the Exalted. Because why? We spent our lives being batini mushriks. We've taken our desires as a God other than Allah the Exalted. So we must use things as a means to get closer to Allah the Exalted, not as the object itself. We use food. We don't worship the food. You take the money, you spend it in good causes, you do good with it. You shouldn't work for just the money. So many people, maybe they gather so much money, they don't even know what to do with it. They'll start collecting in bank accounts, and will they ever spend that money in their lifetime? No. What good was it if you didn't use it for good? So we must use the world as a means to get closer to Allah the Exalted. And of course, there's many different gradational levels here, many different stairs that you could go up. So start by looking at your actions and seeing, am I doing this for Allah's sake or not? Am I doing this out of God consciousness or not? Or am I leaving this thing out of God consciousness or not? And then make yourself form the habit of aligning yourself to do this thing out of awareness of Allah the Exalted, with sincere intention. So this is where I will end this lesson. Inshallah, next week we will have another. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.